Hi, welcome to today's Zoom meeting. My name is Deva Green, and today we'll be talking about Pluto in the fifth house, or Leo. As always, I would like this to be as interactive as possible. So when you have a question, feel free to ask. There are no stupid questions. In my view, I've often found that it's helpful for others because one person may have the exact same question as you, but feel a bit insecure to ask. So just let me know as we go through our discussion, any questions, any input, or any additions to Pluto and Leo in the fifth house. Okay, so getting started, uh, what we'll do is we'll talk about Pluto, the Sun, and the fifth house archetype. From my understanding, the true challenge of astrology is to synthesize or to integrate each two archetypes together. So how we'll approach this is we'll first start with the Sun, fifth house Leo archetype, and then we'll discuss the Pluto archetype, and we'll synthesize those together. Remember that Pluto, eighth house Scorpio archetype, always magnifies, intensifies any archetype that it touches. So when we see Pluto in the fifth house or Leo, it's the Pluto emphasis is going to intensify or magnify the Leo fifth house archetype. So the archetype of the Sun, Leo, and the fifth house correlates to the bottom line core evolutionary intentions of creative self-actualization that these souls have prior to the current life. When we're talking about Pluto, we're talking about what came before and where the soul will naturally pick up in this life. So there's going to be a natural orientation for these souls to the creative self-actualization dynamic. And that's because prior to the current life, they've been learning lessons around how to use creative energies. In essence, these souls have been learning to become the director of their own play. And from that point of view, they're wanting their capacities, talents, and abilities to find maximum expression. When we think about self-actualization and we think about the fifth house archetype, its beauty is the desire to become everything that it can be. And expressed in its pure form, that light or that the need for creative actualization will then be understood in others, and the light of Leo can then can then all be poured on others in terms of encouraging others to also become the director of their own plays, to take charge, to essentially manifest or actualize all the inherent potentials and capacities that they have. So coming into the life, these souls have been learning these lessons, and it's naturally where they're going to pick up in this lifetime. Within that, then, is the dynamic of the creative purpose. And when we're looking at Pluto, fifth house, Leo, the soul will come in with a sense of special destiny, will come in with a sense of creative purpose, willpower. That again, the soul is desiring to become the director of its own play. I can't emphasize this enough, having a fifth house Pluto myself, because the sense of willpower, the subjective focus on one's creative purpose is all to fulfill the intention to, in a positive way, assume center stage. Now, of course, I want to be careful about the way I deliver that, but again, it's to counteract. At times, these souls have come in with lifetimes to where their willpower, their creative purpose has not been actualized to the maximum that those with Pluto and Leo or the fifth house would have liked it to be. So the advice, especially when these souls are in their younger age, is to resist the temptation to negatively judge, a very intense self-focus, which is often what these souls will come in with, again, early in life. How that will be expressed is relative to the other factors in the birth chart. Let's say, for example, if a soul is born with South Node in Taurus, in the 8th house with the 5th house Pluto, that soul will, generally speaking, have a tendency to be much more quiet, a minimum of fanfare, that they will generally, though, still have that very strong focus, very strong self-focus upon actualizing their own creative purpose for the life and harnessing their willpower. It is connected to the first house. Pluto in Aries or Pluto in the first were, like all fire signs, a sense of special destiny, freedom, and independence to discover what this special destiny was about. And Pluto in the 5th house, this is known. It's intact. It's not a sense of discovery or needing to find out. It's very much the roar of the lion. Here I come. I know what it is, and I'm going to become the director of my play, and please, I'm going to do everything in my power to actualize. Um, so in terms of the intense self-focus, a part of that is necessary. Of course, via the 11th house polarity point, throughout the life, there can be a connection with special destiny to community, to a socially relevant need, to liberate from an overly subjective focus upon that creative or special destiny. And the special destiny can then be linked with a need of the collective, can serve a higher purpose. The soul can essentially harness that creative power of Leo to help others actualize, to help others manifest, to help others also take control of their life and their special destiny. Um, so there is going to be a focus, or there's going to be an emphasis upon special destiny coming into the life. Those with Pluto in the 5th house or Leo will feel it coming from the womb. I have emerged here with something very special to do. And again, it's the requiring uh, the ability to take that by the reins, or to be able to direct that. And often what can happen, even in the best of intentions, is that those, because of the value that the souls put upon the special destiny within themselves and for creative actualization, they can often try to control, or they can often try to harness or to shape and mold the creative actualization process of others. And I've found that for me personally, that's been one of the most difficult dynamics for me to navigate, even in the purest of intentions. It's like I tune into a creative capacity in another, or I see an ability, and this energy just takes over, and it's almost like I want to become that director for the other person. And that's when the 11th house polarity steps back and says, yeah, that might be a special capacity that they have, but do they relate to it that way? Does the other, I have Pluto in Libra, do they feel that this is their destiny, or something that they'd really like to put a lot of focus on to actualize? Or are there other creative talents that they feel more define them and their special purpose, and so on? So it's been very cathartic and very healing to, via the 11th house polarity, to step back, to see where that comes from. That while there is no ill will, that the intention is really, again, for that 5th house Pluto to manifest that special destiny from within itself, not from excessive external validation, not from needing to be on center stage. I remember the words of Eric Anderson, which have proved to be very true. Everybody gets their 5 minutes, and in the end, fame is nothing but a whore. So, in terms of the need, to me, what the bottom line is of being able to take control of the special destiny is doing that without the excessive validation or acknowledgement from others. Of course, we will all have a need for this, Everybody has a need to feel special. Everybody has a need for validation and for acknowledgement from time to time. But when we see Pluto and Leo in the fifth house, that need can be can become a pitfall, or it can become a hang-up. It can become a habitual pattern that, in truth, inhibits the soul from truly being able to manifest or actualize that lion's roar. So in terms of the special destiny, that when the soul is really in tune with what the special destiny for that life is, from my point of view, fanfare, no fanfare, applause, no applause, it just doesn't matter. It's not about receiving the validation. It's about that underlying intention to, again, become the director of your own play, to take charge of the true special destiny, and to purge any excessive need for acknowledgement, recognition, and from preceding the sign of Cancer. Where does that come from? That comes from an insecurity that's linked to the sign that followed it, the preceding sign of Cancer. Leo expressed in its natural state can be one that's self-empowered, that again manifests that special destiny from within itself, and can liberate via the 11th house polarity from an over need for acknowledgement, an over need for recognition, and so on. Um, and it can become an integrating function. It can become a way that the soul integrates the special purpose, the special destiny. It won't be linked with a subjective expression of the creativity, rather, again, with the 11th house polarity point, to a relevant collective need. I remember looking at the whole Pluto and Leo generation, and through rebellion, through rebellion, they were able to actualize a special destiny that was very unique, and they did receive naturally. What happens then is that when you step back from that, you naturally receive special recognition. It's from the music, the Beatles, from all the original, right, 11th house polarity point, from all the original music that was coming out at that time. This generation in specific did receive special recognition, that others in other generations did not receive, because of the uniqueness of the work that they were doing, weaving in the polarity point. And many of these souls do come in with an unconscious sense of special recognition. Many of these souls have had prior lives of royalty, or have been noticed, or have been in situations where, in one way or another, there has been special recognition. So there can be an unconscious expectation to have this happen again. But again, does this really reflect the soul's creative purpose, special destiny, what they feel they're capable of? Sometimes what's happened is that that special recognition, due to the insecurity, from my point of view, has shaped or has molded how that soul has gone about manifesting their creative purpose. And so the task, or what happens then, the next step, is for the recognition to come in and of itself, by the soul again stepping back from that, by the soul manifesting what it's really here to do. That special recognition automatically comes.
Deva, I have a question. Can you please speak about the differences in special destiny for Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius?
Oh, great question. Thank you for asking, Linda. Yes, the sense of special purpose for Aries, uh, first house Pluto souls, is very much in the realm of self-discovery. That Aries symbolizes a brand new evolutionary cycle is just beginning. So it's in an instinctive state. It's almost as if the soul is needing and desiring to discover, or to have life manifest through a continual state of discovery. So oftentimes the special destiny is linked to what's to come through experience. What can I learn through this experience? With Leo, the sense of special destiny is from creative actualization. Again, the sense of special destiny is known, it's complete, it's intact. And so creative actualization then becomes what's linked with the special destiny. With Pluto in Sagittarius or with Pluto in the ninth house, the special destiny is linked with personal truth, the discovery or the manifestation coming from Leo of one's personal truth and one's personal vision in life. While as in Leo, it's the creative purpose. In Sagittarius, it can be more the philosophical, metaphysical, underlying natural laws at times that soul feels a special connection, a special destiny with. So, for example, with Pluto in Sagittarius or Pluto in the ninth house, this can be souls that, in the very best expression, um, can impart in one way or another natural laws, can manifest their personal truths, can deeply intuit, seeing the ninth house, can in one forms can be teachers of discovery or of connection to one's intuitive sense of what's right and wrong for themselves, their personal beliefs, uh, um, and the special destiny is then linked with that. So as you're pointing out, that all fire signs will feel a sense of special destiny, yet what it is linked to is different.
Thank you.
So yes, being noticed very much that. Sorry, I love the peacock. Very much that these souls in other lifetimes have a special capacity, or coming into the life, have been noticed in other lifetimes, and have either become accustomed to that, or these are souls in other forms again have either been noticed for things that they don't really feel reflect them, or depending on the chart, have been suppressed or have been blocked from having their creative talents noticed. Let's say, for example, if you see Pluto Saturn, or you see 10th house, the evolutionary intent is to then establish or to manifest the creative purpose within the social realm or within the outer world, perhaps the career function or the social realm, the social career. Um, but at other times, it can be that these souls have experienced a suppression from authority, that those creative talents have not been noticed, that again, especially in the 10th house, they've either been carved or shaped. If you want to be noticed, you manifest like this. Or if you want this to be accepted, you shape it like this. And the tendency then, or the Leo can fall prone into then conforming to how will I be noticed, versus staying in tune, or versus actualizing that lion's roar and saying, you know what? That's really not what I feel I'm here to do. And as much acknowledgement as that may get me or not, that's really not at a bottom line level what I feel is going to fulfill me. Or it can become, even though it's a temptation, the soul can also have subliminal awareness that it won't keep them filled, so to speak, that that's not, again, in alignment with what their creative purpose in this lifetime is linked to. And then, again, being noticed happens in and of itself. Um, the courage, or via the first house, or taking charge of one's destinies in such a way as to um, their creative purpose will naturally lead to being noticed or recognized in some way. Um, but in the 11th house fashion, the polarity point, they're not attached to that. In fact, at least in my viewpoint, one of the very best expressions of Leo is to shine that light back on others. to help others become noticed and recognized who haven't had a chance, promoters. There are some who have, even if it's not Pluto in the fifth, have significant Leo energy, and they will do, gosh, not to sound overly dramatic, but my experience has been really going to a high level to make sure that what they value or what they find meaningful gets promoted. So, in its natural expression, Leo can really have that generosity of heart, of spirit, can manifest loyalty to help others become noticed, and inadvertently, that light then shines back on them. Bottomless pit, yes. And this is the pitfall. This can, in other times, it's again, in some, it's due to, in a sense, being crushed in one way or another, to having unconscious messages of you will only be loved or recognized if and only if. And so the soul at times can, one expression is that they've never really been acknowledged in the way that they would have liked to. Again, maybe for this or that, or maybe being linked to others who are in positions of fame. Um, but in terms of the bottomless pit, it can really be due to not really being acknowledged in the ways that they needed due to that insecurity following cancer. So if we find that ourselves or others are in a state to where we're feeling a tremendous need for acknowledgement or validation, or are feeling insecure and can become this bottomless pit, the best thing to do, at least from my point of view, is to recognize or to validate from within yourself. This can especially be challenging with children who come in with their own unconscious dynamics and sometimes wound, and it can be very difficult to manifest, because I'm sure that all of us know, the feeling of, well, it's just never enough. And from the fifth house Pluto point of view, well, it's never really enough. It's true. So the evolutionary intent is to again become the director of your own play, to take charge, to manifest this from within yourself, to as gently as possible with yourself. If you find that you're in this state, to give yourself the recognition, because at times what can happen is, again, the soul can strike out, or the soul can make movements to actualize what they feel they're really here to do, and via the second eighth, the rug gets pulled out, they are shut out, or they aren't acknowledged, or they have support, second house, or they're abandoned. So in terms of the bottomless pit, to validate that if the soul is in alignment with their creative purpose, if they're making efforts to help themselves and others manifest what they feel they're capable of doing, they can help themselves through that. Not with anybody else's acknowledgement, but via the second house. Again, doing this from within oneself. It's a hang up that can be worked through. Um, and it's getting to the core of why the soul feels this way, why they're feeling this sense of needing or becoming this bottomless pit, and to take charge, to then do what they need to do, and to jettison via the 11th house, to objectify oneself, and to link their creative capacities again with a collective need. I remember in the Pluto book, a beautiful illustration of this is somebody who played their guitar, and they had an incredible talent to do so. Wanted to become a solo musician. All of this is fine, but they reached a creative stagnation point, to where they weren't able to make it. Their creative energies dried up. They became this bottomless pit. And through shock, oftentimes the Aquarius polarity point of the 11th house, through emotional shock of being left by the partner, they were essentially making love to the guitar. they were then able to link their creative capacities to a collective need. This isn't to belittle. I mean, music is one of the most natural expressions of creativity. In my view, it's a universal language. The point is the orientation. And that when the soul stepped back, they were then able to use their creative purpose to teach. They had South Node, I believe, in Sagittarius in the 10th house, but being able to manifest then their creative purposes in a way that reflected a need of the collective, teaching Sagittarius, establishing themselves. So it's the evolution of how that creative energy is used.
Deva, I have a question. What is the reason behind actors and actresses becoming the best in their field by winning awards, such as the Academy Awards, and competing with each other? Is it the same as the pursuit of excellence?
Oh, well, that's really a great question. And I guess it depends on the soul's orientation. For some, you can see that their bottom line in acting is to convey what they feel is a very essential message to express or to actualize talents that they have that are to help others as well manifest these. And it's independent or it's not really linked with winning awards and it just kind of happens. That it's a byproduct, so to speak, or it's something that happens from the abilities that they carry. And then with others, it's very, very much about wanting to be the best, or it's very, very much about wanting to be considered the most special or the most important, or to being the biggest or brightest star in the universe. So I would say that it really depends on that soul's orientation. And in terms of the competition, in a natural expression, there's simply no need for it. And I'm glad that you asked because that's an essential lesson that Leo, fifth house Plutos are learning, that when they purge that or when they're able to step back from the need to compete, maybe make it an inner competition, doing my personal best, that's fine. That they'll find that maybe they were pitfalling, maybe that for whatever reason that they can't find out, they're always coming in second. I can never get that first place. Why? And when they step back from the competitiveness, all of a sudden they get that first place.
I have a question,
Yeah,
Deva.
yeah.
Um, it's maybe you don't want to deal with it at all, and maybe you want to deal with it later. It's about generation bashing, whether it's millennial or you can look at me and see that I'm a baby boomer. And I find that the lashing out, there was even a fellow on a forum of sorts who was kind of sniggering as he talked about the shortcomings of the boomer generation. And for any group, I find it not what I want. What do you think?
Oh, well, personally, I totally agree with you that it wouldn't be fair to, bashing, in my point of view, that's not the focus of my presentations.
No.
And I feel that that there's a distortion and a pure expression of any archetype.
Okay. Thank you.
So integration. The sun, just like the sun, that Leo fifth house serves integration function within consciousness. And that without that, we wouldn't have a sense of purpose. So, again, going back to special destiny, that we'll all feel this with Pluto in the fifth house, that it will be magnified or intensified. And it gives an integration purpose, or it gives an integration function, just like the sun. So from my point of view, it's not the feeling of special destiny that's the problem or that's the issue. We're all going to feel it. It's our orientation to it, how we go about doing it, what it's linked with, and in that sense, how we integrate things, how we integrate our life, our life's purpose. On in the inner child, yes, relative to the fifth house correlating to creative expression and a focus on the creative principle in the universe in general. The inner child that people with Pluto and Leo or Pluto in the fifth house can be very playful, can really find beautiful ways of finding outlets for the inner child to be expressed, whether it's through music, painting, whether it's, let's say you have a fourth house emphasis, whether it's on nurturing children and helping them actualize their abilities. But the inner child, through creative expression, in whatever form that takes, can be one of the most natural expressions of Pluto and Leo in the fifth house, and can naturally serve to help the soul recover creative talents or capacities that perhaps had not been expressed in other lifetimes. Yes, and working with children, that can be a very natural expression of Pluto and Leo in the fifth house as well. Some of these souls will attract children who are just as strong-willed and also just as self-focused as themselves, and the mirroring principle that this will then reflect, their children reflects on the parent, just like the sun. Oftentimes that the soul is learning that critical lesson of validating but not shaping. Again, even in the very best expressions, that the tendency can be for the soul to tune into a creative capacity and try and shape, try and mold all of this. And so children can be a natural expression of how the soul actualizes purpose relative to nurturing that child for who that child is. It's kind of fourth house, fifth house, but it can be a soul that attracts children whose mirrors back the same strength, the same need to take charge, the same need to be the director of their own play, and so they'll have the same response. If the soul tries to shape these children along subjective lines, they'll experience the lion's roar. So it can be a natural way for these souls to actualize themselves, to nurture, and to learn these lessons of how to use creativity or to how to self-actualize. So it's going to be expressed in different ways relative to the evolutionary state of the soul, that no one size fits all. So Leo, being fifth house Pluto or Leo being expressed through the consensus. Let's say, for example, the consensus stage is conforming to the norm, learning the social rules, progressing through the evolutionary, progressing up the evolutionary ladder. So let's say in the third stage consensus, the soul has learned how society works and is able to get to the top. Throughout the consensus then, the soul is progressively taking charge relative to progressing through the social ladders. That at each stage, the soul will feel a sense of special purpose, of special destiny, and that will be linked with social progression. They could be considered natural leaders or having a special gift or capacity within the consensus. In the individuated state, then, the special purpose or special destiny will be linked with a creative talent in the context of one's individual capacities, one's need to individuate, to break free from the norms, to discover who they are independent from the consensus. So in this stage, the special destiny is going to be linked with the actualization and the manifestation of unique talents. It very much makes me think of those who break out into these really artistic or these really unique forms of personal expression that really reflect their individuality. So again, not to generalize, but the music that came out during the Pluto and Leo generation, to me, really reflects the individuated style, or really reflects the individuated states in general. In the later stage, that soul in the third stage individuated, that fifth house is going to be able to manifest creative talents or purposes that helps the soul, that helps the consensus itself evolve. So the special purpose is going to be linked with helping the consensus or helping the mainstream integrate and actualize material that was too revolutionary, that was too different, that was too unique, in such a way that it can then be integrated. It happens over time, and that will be linked with the soul's special destiny, special purpose, and so on. In the spiritual state, these souls are going to feel a special destiny linked with union with spirit, with manifesting creativity that is linked with progressive understanding that their creativity is connected, or that they're co-creators, that they're not the source of their creativity. And that within itself can be a liberating moment, and a fundamental lesson of learning how to use our creative purpose, how to use our creative energies when it's linked with co-creation, or when the soul realizes that they're not the source but a channel for creativity to flow. Natural blocks then alleviate themselves, and the soul is able to manifest what it is that they want really, or what it is that their soul is really here to do. So in the spiritual state, that's linked with union with source, desire to use creativity to help others manifest, to help others actualize, and it's linked with removing blockages where the soul would unconsciously identify themselves as the source of creativity. In the third stage spiritual, the sense of special purpose is linked with disseminating or imparting wisdom that will be here for a long time to come. These souls have a capacity to impart universal, timeless laws that will be true whether the human being is here or not. So the special destiny is linked with that as it progresses through the spiritual stage. Before we move into our final part of our talk, I want to pause and make sure that there aren't any questions, aren't any points of clarification.
Yes, I have a question about the second stage spiritual, and how Leo is linked with a fall from grace. Could you,
Oh,
yeah, give us some examples or explain why this happens?
that is a great question. And as I, haven't, it's hard to talk about something you haven't directly experienced. So as I feel, I haven't really experienced this state, that from my studies and from what I've learned and my personal experiences at this stage, that the fall from grace can help realign the ego with the soul. That when we're in the first stage spiritual, that the soul is essentially dismantling, or it's learning to purge any parts of itself that are identified from an egocentric point of view, that would point to itself rather than to the source. So it's deflating. It's a very Virgo experience in the first stage spiritual. When we get to the second stage, and again, this is my understanding, it's almost like the soul is trying to resurrect that ego. It's like that soul is almost rebelling against that experience of deflation, and would have the temptation then to try to reassert that it is the source of the knowledge. They've had genuine 9 times out of 10, or at least from what I understand, that part of the problem is that they've had genuine spiritual experiences. It's that via the Leo archetype and the intention of this stage to realign the ego with the soul, that the soul would then be tempted to point to itself as the source of the knowledge, or two, via the Leo archetype, to manifest relative to delusions of grandeur. And this has severity in expression, that it all depends on desire. In some, it manifests as like like almost like a raving mystic, almost like, why won't anybody listen to me? Like, really, no, kind of like riding through the town, just like with a bell, like, listen, wake up, wake up. And I'm just kidding, but in some it can be like that, and while in others, let's say, and this is just an example that I'm pulling from, but Rajneesh was one of the more intense and one of the more dramatic. And remember, at the end, what he said was, "Thank God, I now no longer have to pretend to be enlightened." So the intention of that stage, at least from my point of view, it's like a trial through fire. It's really ensuring that the soul does not claim any knowledge as its own. And relative to the fifth house archetype, the soul can then re-empower, or the soul can then manifest a special destiny where it's reflecting its true soul's intention, or its true soul's talents. So I hope that helps, that it brings clarity and non-fear. Because again, remember that it all depends on desire. And if the desire to merge with source is true, then that's essentially what that stage will really bring out. In the end, that it's a purification, at least in the ways that I understand it at this point.
Thanks, Deva. That was great. Thank you.
Okay, so our first example here of Pluto and Leo, Hillary Clinton, and my goodness, I'm just recently having her speak on the Democratic Convention. What a warrior she is. Oh my gosh, having made it through what she did, and coming out the other side. And what she said, which really inspired me. She has this moon in Pisces in the fourth house. It's trining her south node in Scorpio in the first. Her Jupiter is also not quite conjunct, but in Sagittarius and in the first house. Pluto's in Leo in the ninth house, conjunct Saturn, new phase. Her words were that when you let go of your personal ambition, and when you let go of your personal desire, and I think, in not to put words in her mouth, but what I got from that was, when you surrender to a higher will, and you put your creative energies around aligning with the good of all, or what's needed relative to the collective. The polarity point being in Aquarius, North Node being in Taurus in the seventh. She is now one of the most active voices for helping younger people in the grassroots. To me, that's the Aquarius, younger people get a start. And she is putting all of her energy around, despite, of course, what felt like a tremendous loss, and must have triggered tremendous disillusionment. The moon in Pisces in the fourth, making that trine. She's using her creative energies, using her creative talents to helping those who are getting started become self-sustaining. Those who want to join forces and make alliances with those who have the needs of the whole. Or I remember her campaign that we're stronger together. That was her slogan, and I really see that as the North Node being in Taurus in the seventh. So what an evolution! And seeing the Pluto new phase, a new way of integrating her authority. No, I mean, she was blocked, or she was denied being the president, right? And so not center stage. I mean, you never know what can happen for her, but the point is that through that process, and through her cooperation with what the will of the good, what's intended, how can I contribute to the good of all here? Or how can I make a difference for those who need it, or who are underprivileged? Also seeing equality, seeing the seventh house. The moon in Pisces, those who have been suffered loss or who can't get a fair shake. How can I help and how can I use my creative capacities to help? Well, my goodness, she's now aligning with this grassroots energy with the younger people in ways that's just making all the difference. I mean, you can tell I could just go on, but in terms of how the creative purpose was reshaped. And seeing through the loss, how she integrated it through a higher understanding, Moon and Pisces in the fourth, um, and so on. From my estimation, she's in the first stage individuated, or transitioning from the third stage consensus to the first stage individuated, because she's seeing beyond the consensus. She certainly knows, how to form alliances. I would say with the Scorpio energy here in the 12th to make something bigger and better. Higher vision, 12th house. And she's now using this creative energy to help those who don't have a voice become empowered. And she was always a champion for that, but through her personal experience or through what happened to her, and or through the experience of loss, I would say, she was able to rekindle, or she was able to realign her creative purpose and her creative expression to make things bigger and brighter than maybe they could have been. That's just my speculation, but surrendering to the higher good. And sometimes while you're in it, you don't know why it's happening. You always know in the end there is always a why. But her approach to just, okay, this is what, how do I help the good, or how do I align myself with what's good for all, and go from there. And I found that really inspiring in terms of the evolution. And Mars is in a culminating phase, so she's closing, or she's bringing to closure desires that she had from the past. And just this is my personal view, a heck of a spokesmodel, or a heck of a champion for those, and I think she will be for time to come.
Deva, I have two questions. Regarding her Pluto skip steps, I know she has Saturn and Mars skip steps as well, but regarding the Pluto and Leo skip steps, it seems she's at the very end of resolving them because of the 9-degree orb. And how do the skip steps relate to natural law and the 9th house?
That's a great question. Yeah, she's at the tail end of it here, and recovering. I would say that it's recovering her personal truth, that through the process, or especially through the campaign, at least this is my view, she recovered more and more of her voice by disconnecting, or by jettisoning connections that she had where she wasn't free to really speak what her values were. Seeing the North Node in Taurus in the 7th house, progressively becoming more self-sustaining, independent from the support of this person or that person. It's almost like a discovery, or it's almost like an integration of, specifically with natural law, that the more she became self-sustaining, relied on her message, and that she could do it, that there was like a recovery of natural law coming through self-sustainment, through pulling away from any alliances. And I don't want to make it sinister, but ultimately being connected to those who, while they helped her, they were also hindering her in expressing her honest voice, or expressing what her values were, and not being able to fully become self-sustaining in the ways that she wanted. And I saw her completing this through the campaign, as she progressively gained more confidence in her voice, and not needing to play the game. I don't know, or feeling more confident that the more she put herself out there exactly as who she was, exactly in the way that she wanted her message to be conveyed. Wow. It really was stirring, and it really did get a lot of support.
Thanks, that was great. So she was speaking out her values and her truth. That's really good. Do you use the part of fortune? Here it's in Aries in the 5th house.
Oh, that's a great question, and it's just not something that I'm familiar with.
Okay, does anyone else have any questions here? Okay, would you like to go on to the next chart?
Yeah. David Bowie. Here's another example of Pluto and Leo generation. From my estimations, he was second stage individuated, maybe going into the third stage individuated, but certainly somebody who was absolutely seeing the Pluto in the 7th house and the Saturn and the Moon culminating as he matured, that his creativity was really manifesting through a connection to helping others become self-authentic, becoming very honest, helping him balance discordant parts of himself, seeing the 7th house. I remember him saying in an interview that his whole life was his whole self-image, his whole structure of life, how he saw his creative purpose was completely revamped upon the birth of his son. And looking at this Saturn balsamic moon and Leo in the 7th house, I mean, what a beautiful expression of how this natural Leo energy can be expressed, that it became really awakened, where it became really emphasized upon the birth of his own son, and being able to give him the best, being able to see himself in his son in a way, or being able to see everything that he could be, and using his son as an instrument to give him to give everything that he could. And he was really, really heartwarming, and you can hear that in his music too, the ability or the desire to help people liberate. Seeing the South Node, the North Node being in Gemini in the 4th, conjunct Uranus, through his vocalizations, through his singing, progressively become secure with their own individuality. So in a way, his music was a way of liberating from insecurities with his voice, of being able to impart really unique messages in a way that could really strike an emotional chord. And that was a way of kind of coming out of that more subjective expression of the 5th house. With Sag in the 10th too, there can be, looking at that, there could have been there again is the desire to become the director of your own play, but that may have been subjective, especially early in life, seeing the sun, or seeing the Leo energy and the Sag. It makes a trine to Pluto, so the ability to integrate that, his personal truth, to integrate with who he was authentically, 10th house, and then how to communicate that, especially with the 7th house, or how to deliver messages in a way that helped people liberate, to decondition, to also deprogram from his own insecurities. Polarity point is being in the 1st house, in Aquarius, definitely an artist who was all his own. I mean, from my point of view, you distinctly know Bowie's voice and his style. You just, as much as you would try, or you could never really emulate or copy him. At least that's my point of view. And looking at this too, the blueprint, or tuning into your own individual nature. And I remember one of my favorite songs by him is Starman. And there's a starman waiting in the sky. And from my point of view, it's almost like a way of saying, there's a way to decondition, or it's opening up to your liberated self, opening up to your unique nature, and that having that not be defined by somebody else, seventh house, but to manifest this via your own independent actions, first house. So there was a lot of revamping, or the creative energy was being linked with the alternative, or helping people break into their more alternative or individuated parts, and in that way reformatting or reformulating how the creative energies were expressed in the past, not to project too much, but the potential here, especially seeing the sun, or seeing Pluto conjunct Saturn, both retrograde, and the moon. Well, the Pluto's a bit out of orb, but he might be feeling that the Saturn moon in the seventh, with Pluto close by. Here's how the creative energy is supposed to be expressed. Culminating those supposed to be's, or culminating experiences where the authority, also at the 10th house, perhaps tried to wield, or also tried to shape or mold him. And relative to that trine, that Leo roar, well, here's my music. Here's how I'm going to express myself. And now I have my son. Really seeing how breaking free, or in the past, he may have been molded, or he may have unconsciously taken in or embodied messages around how creative energies were supposed to be expressed, what the truth is supposed to be, seeing the Sag 10th house, in his own way playing that out. Maybe, of course, definitely not a consensus, but having a strong should be, and through the music, or liberating that through the lyrics that he was writing, the birth of his child, helping himself and others through expression, through communication, become inwardly secure with those parts that were most different and unique. Um, and Pluto's polarity point being in Aquarius in the first house, a new cycle relative to individuation. So definitely a part of that. I know that he triggered, in his own way, those who, a movement in music that, though very unique, very different, triggered its own kind of wave, or triggered its own momentum, first house, through the impact of liberation, deconditioning, and using your creative energies in whatever way is most prone for the soul. So the courage not to be arbitrarily defined by others. I can really feel that through his music, and was inspired by that, and again heartwarmed by the impact of the birth of his first son, and how that reshaped, or how that redefined his use of creative energy, and his feeling, his sense of special purpose.
Deva, it looks like he passed when Pluto, transiting Pluto, was on his sun, on his Mars sun. Does Pluto usually bring death? Because
Oh,
if Pluto is death, then the sun, Leo, is life. So that seems a bit contradictory.
oh, right. Well, think of it this way, that while it can at times, it doesn't always lead to death. That Pluto's a limitation, and or can be a limitation, and seeing, or the limit of something, and seeing in the 12th house, specifically a culmination. So it was a natural time frame for the limit of his natural life, and a rebirthing, or a re-expression, through the release of the physical form, Capricorn. So even if it wasn't in the body, that the re-expression or the rebirthing happened through a natural passing, or happened through Sun Mars. At least from my point of view, that the time is up, the cup is full. I can't do anything more relative to time space, and so Pluto brought about that passing, or Pluto brought about the natural time frame, But just as you're saying that it's not that death leads to rebirth. And so it was definitely seeing the 12th house setting seeds or through the passing that a natural culmination, which would then lead to a rebirthing or would lead to a fruition. Things that could only manifest through a physical passing.
Great, thanks, Deva.
Yeah, thank you for your questions. I really appreciate them. Does anybody else have any questions or thoughts or additions to Pluto fifth house or the example charts?
I have a question about synthesizing Pluto and Leo with Scorpio in the fifth house. And in my case, on top of that, Mars in Scorpio in the fifth house, square to that Pluto. And I'm just wondering about if you could speak a little bit about synthesizing the two.
Right. So you're saying that you have Mars and Scorpio in the fifth house?
Mm-hmm.
And you're wanting to synthesize those two archetypes together?
Yeah, with Pluto in Leo,
Mm-hmm.
and then fifth house Scorpio.
Okay. Yeah, blending those two together, that the soul is going to want to maximize, or the soul is going to want to purge limitations relative to actualization or expression of the special purpose or the special destiny. So let's say, for example, the soul will not accept limitations of the past relative to what the soul feels is capable of doing. So if the soul feels tempted, or if the soul feels that a restriction or a desire of the past, seeing that Mars is in Scorpio on the 5th, is to either assert or to have to prove one's creativity, or to have to prove one's own abilities. This time around, there will be a natural resistance to that. There can be a natural strength and a natural willpower to say, no, I don't need to prove myself or my ability to anybody. I simply need to manifest, or I simply need to maximize. I need to create situations to where I can really tune into and I can really deepen. Scorpio is about deepening my creative expression. So it would be more about deepening and resisting, or if that came up, purging any temptations or any situations where others have asked, or where you have felt drawn into these confrontations of needing to prove. So it's more about deepening that soul's purpose, creating situations where that can again come to its maximum, and I would say that a deep psychological awareness, that the soul can have a penetrating insight into what's holding the soul back from manifesting what it's capable of. So potentially very natural psychological abilities, or an ability to tune into what's subconscious and say, hey, you know, don't be hindered by that, or don't be blocked by that, or don't limit yourself.
Awesome. Thank you, Deva.
Any more questions from our audience? I just wanted to ask about the Pluto in Leo generation. They do seem to get blamed for destroying the planet in terms of comments I've read, such as the Virgo generation coming along to clean up the mess that the previous Leo generation created. Is there any truth in this?
Oh, well, My personal view, there can always be a natural and a distorted expression of any generation, and I just feel that it really, just as in the Virgo generation, Leo generation, or any other generation, it's going to take a whole. It's going to take everybody to come together to help heal the crisis that's now manifested on this planet and that's been growing for quite some time. So my response to that is that if being a Pluto in Leo or Pluto in Libra, if everybody can come together and play an equal role in helping one another and contributing what they can to help in whatever ways they can, then we'll be set to rebalance, or then we can balance out the extremities. But as with anything, it would go personally that um, uh, uh, we need to find ways to work together, or that it will take everybody to do this. And there's going to be people in every generation that say okay, and there are going to be people in every generation that say no, thank you.
That's great. Thank you. I do have two more questions.
Mm-hmm.
Could you please comment on the North Node of Neptune being in Leo at 12 degrees? What does that mean for the world?
Yeah, that collectively then that we're going to feel that we all have some sort of part to play in taking charge of our collective destinies. And what we're finding now, at least, or, again, it's having a Pluto in fifth, it's just, my subjective, what I've been more tuned into via the crisis is here is that we're as a collective, I think we're feeling more interrelated, even though we're being distanced, that we're starting to realize more from within ourselves that we don't exist separately from each other, that everything that we do impacts everybody else and so on. And so seeing we live in a global, or there's a global network, and seeing the Neptune here in the fifth house, that potentially we can have inspirations to self-empower as a collective, to lend our creative strengths to helping the collective improve, to grow, to heal. So from my understanding, seeing the North Node collectively being in Leo at 12 degrees, that there can be inspiration of how to take back charge on a global, or how to collectively take charge of our destinies with an awareness that we're all connected, that we don't live in isolated bubbles or vacuums, and that the sense of special destiny is then linked with co-creation, with that sense of global impact. Not that, I'm going to have a global impact on the world, but that we live in a global, that we, not via delusions of grandeur, I should say, but that collectively our creative energies can be lended to co-creation, to something higher than ourselves, to helping or to lending our creative energies to the collective in a general sense, and that it can be a new way, or it can be a way to express, I don't have my Aries polarity point, but it can be a way to express our creative talents that's in alignment with a greater good.
Thank you so much. And my last question, the North Node for USA is around 5 or 6 degrees Leo. This is the USA chart. What does that mean for that nation?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Yeah, the USA chart has Leo at 5 degrees, the North Node Leo at 5 or 6 degrees.
Uh-huh.
What does that mean for that nation?
That we, as a nation, to take charge of our destiny in a way that is in alignment with our creative talents, our creative purposes, especially after the trauma. South Node being in the 11th house, that what we're experiencing right now, at least from my point of view, and I know what was written about in the Pluto books is we are experiencing right now being one nation among many after the Leo orientation of literally having every other nation revolve around us, it seems. It's my point of view, and we're now readjusting, or we're now harnessing that North Node in Leo to take charge, that we have some political voices here who are just cannot speak loudly enough as to how much we have to unite, or how we need to take charge of what's happening here, not look to this leader, not look to that leader, not look to the government, but that we essentially we have to recognize that we're the ones that have to do this. And to me, that's a very Leo message, that we have the power, if we so choose, to hold our destiny, to wield our destiny as a country. And right now we're in the process of doing just that. We're either that, and I'm really glad you asked that, because something I forgot to mention in terms of an expression of a distorted fifth house, or Pluto and Leo in the fifth, is feigning a false sense of victimization relative to the need for acknowledgement, recognition, wanting to have attention on the soul. So it's feigning, right? I'm powerless. I'm powerless. I can't do anything about this. So our North Node in the US and Leo, well, yes, we do. It's hard, but we do have the power within this nation to take back control of our destiny and how it's shaped. So I'm really glad you asked that, because Pluto in the fifth will come in with really strong lessons that way, that they again can be the directors of their own play, to not be beholden to or feel victimized or powerless relative to creative expression, or to take determining how their destiny will be expressed. And so the US right now is hearing these messages. And to me, that's a very North Node in Leo, that in the end, we're going to have to be the ones to take charge of this.
There's a question in the chat box. I'm just trying to understand it. I think she's asking about Saturn squaring Pluto in the last quarter phase. So this would be natal Saturn squaring Pluto.
Is there a specific question about it?
I'll just ask 1 second. How the energy suppresses. How is the energy suppressed in terms of Saturn squaring Pluto? Is that?
I mean, it relative to the whole chart. I could only answer relative to the natal chart, but in general, the square in the third quarter, Pluto Saturn, I would see it as defining from within itself the correct expression of creative talents, and throwing that what do I now believe? Crisis in consciousness, because the soul is not going to want to align with the conventional or the cultural ways that are taught relative to the use of creative energy. And then generally that can create a crisis in consciousness. What now? Where do I go with this? So the suppression could be when the soul, in a general sense, again, very, very generally, because I don't have the birth chart, when it's suppressed relative to cultural rights and wrongs, to authorities who would also tried to wield that creative power, if we're talking about fifth house or Leo energy. So generally it can be repressed when the soul is conforming to the supposed to be's versus aligning with the most authentic way, or the ways that the soul is also tuning into relative to its own individuation, having reached the third quarter phase. So I would say with that, trusting the more individuated forms, or trusting the more individual expressions of it in comparison to what society terms as right or wrong, or the correct or incorrect ways. And using the stress or creative stress or creative tension can signal when the soul is out of alignment with that. So I would say, generally speaking, it can ignite stress or tension when the soul is more returning to those conventional, or the more even unconsciously, those patterns that have that should be or that supposed to be feel, or that Saturn definition, rather than what the soul is opening up to, or how the soul would define that from within itself.
That's great. She says thank you.
You betcha.
Okay, we have no more questions because I've just asked everybody in the chat.
Okay.
Last chance, any questions? Okay, David, that brings us to the end of your meeting. Any final thoughts?
Just wanted to encourage anybody who has Leo energy, Pluto in the fifth, to manifest that in ways that it's encouragement that the more deeply you align with your sense of purpose and your sense of special destiny, and shine that light on others, it comes back tenfold. So go for it. The more that you align, and the more that you center in manifesting this from within yourself, that lion's roar. Give yourself permission to follow and to manifest what you feel most deeply connected to, and you'll find that your heart is forever fulfilled, and that light comes back to you in ways that were not anticipated. So just to make you laugh, to make it, to create some humor in these really heavy times, if you feel you need to, um, roar at anybody. Go ahead and roar the loudest you can, and manifest what you go for what you're here, you feel to do, no matter how much fear or whatever inhibitions come up, because that's the intention of Leo, is to really take charge, to do what you're here to do, and to manifest, or to become the director of your own play, and having that reflect back on others, or giving that to others, which is the true generosity and the true spirit of Leo. So go for it. Go where your heart tells you to go, and what will happen from there will pay big dividends.
Fantastic. This was a great meeting. Thank you so much. Let's all say a big thank you to Deva Green.
Thank you.
Thanks, Deva.
Beautiful, Deva. Thank you so much.
Wanted to thank you all for coming and for the support, and of course to Linda, thanks so much for your energy and your continued devotion to the work.